So I'm Stacey MacNaught. I'm Search Director at Techmark. And a few years ago, we took our first voyage into like a big content project purely for link acquisition. And we did an infographic, because apparently that's just what you do. And it was in a pretty boring area, compensation claims for people who've been injured at work. I think it's boring. Planned it, sold it into the client, convinced them this was going to be a link building goldmine. Wrote the copy, got the graphics, launched it. And we all merrily boarded this ship, set sail for a brave new world of link building. And the ship sank. That content bombed, like spectacularly. And we were left with some red faces, pretty pissed off client, handful of social shares, and links from 6 borderline crap websites. Oh yeah, that was a really bad day. And failure, like, it's human, and it's going to happen to us all a lot, but it doesn't feel okay. In fact, I was really close to locking myself in a dark room. Not really, I'm not that way inclined. But it's not okay, it doesn't feel okay, and I didn't want to feel like that again. So we set about picking apart what we'd done, analyzing our processes or spectacular lack thereof, scrutinizing one another a little bit, to put in place some processes and tactics that would minimize the risk of this ever happening to us again. And the key thing is these had to be scalable. We're a growing agency. And scale and creativity, I've had conversations with people who really think scale is a dirty word. I'm not talking about spinning content. I'm talking about strategies and tactics that mean that you can apply this across the board for a number of clients and a number of different projects. So what I want to do today is share some of the tactics that we've employed that have had the greatest success for us in increasing our efficiency and success rates with content marketing. The one conclusion I've come to is that the best way to waste a load of time and money in content marketing isn't actually by producing crap content. I think it's actually by producing really awesome content for completely the wrong audience. Doesn't matter how awesome what you produce is. If you've misunderstood your audience, you're not going to have a particularly easy time hitting your goals. And you set yourself up for a situation that's potentially as awkward as that time I showed South Park to my nana. I did that. She didn't like it. So she wasn't feeling very well, and me being a good granddaughter, thought I'd cheer her up. South Park's been going for like nearly 20 years. Millions of people think South Park is funny content. So off I went up to her house, armed with season 1. My objective, make Nan laugh. The result, Nan pulled this face. Said that, and told me that I'd been brought up better. Nan does not like South Park. It's an extreme example, but we really do need to understand our audience better. And me as an SEO, and I'm sure a lot of people who've come from an out-and-out SEO background would probably agree, I'd over-relied on keyword data to inform content marketing decisions. The keyword planner or traffic coming to your site, what are they typing in? Obviously, we don't need to worry about, keyword data and analytics anymore. Remember that? I'm over it. Honest. Thanks for that, Google. So keyword data might be disappearing. But at least for now, we've got a lot more social data until the EU or some government somewhere takes that away too. And it's social data that's powered for us the biggest change we've made to our audience insight process. So for every big piece of content we launch now, we create these content consumer personas. And they're a little bit different to buyer personas. Sometimes you're targeting a different audience. And even if it's the same audience as your buyers, you need different information. So we're doing things like this. In addition to the regular information that you'd have in a persona, We're looking for things like the companies that our audience likes already on social, the interests that they've publicly affiliated themselves with already. And we're getting all this data through Facebook Graph Search. So Facebook Graph Search, I believe, rolled out for English speakers in the US last year. In the UK, we're a bit behind, so only some of us have got it. We got electricity last week, so we're expecting Graph Search any time now. But some of us do have it, and this is a content marketer's dream. So I'm going to show you a few examples of how we're using this to get insight into the audience. We work with a client called Travelbag. They're a big UK travel company. They do flights, hotels, packages. And one of our goals is to keep their audience engaged all year round on social, so that when they come to book their travel, they book it with Travelbag. To do that, we need to understand what, apart from traveling, do Travelbag's fans get a kick out of. So we can start by running queries like this. Pages liked by people who like Travelbag. And at the moment, it just reads like a list of travel companies that Travelbag's fans are cheating on us with. But then you can filter it by page type: athlete, musician, film, region, language, whatever. If I want to know what TV shows Travelbag's fans are watching, I can find out. And I can start to build a picture of the kind of things that they really get a kick out of, and therefore the kind of content they might engage with. But for me, the best thing about Graph Search is that it doesn't care about your privacy. So you don't have to have admin rights on the page to query it. One of Travelbag's biggest competitors is Virgin Holidays, who've got like a massive market share. I want some of their customers. So I can run the same query: pages liked by people who like Virgin Holidays. I can get really weird and stalkery: bars in London visited by people who like Virgin Holidays. I'm not suggesting that you should follow all of your competitors' fans around bars. They will arrest you for that. But check-in data is available through Graph Search. So you can find out where your customers shop offline. Shops and retail outlets visited by people who like whatever. This goes into outreach, but it's worth mentioning while we're on the topic of Graph Search. Journalists who like Virgin Holidays. You can query people by job title and interest. Bloggers who like Virgin Holidays and Travelbag and gardening. A really great one is journalists who work at self-employed and who like specify any interest, because that gives you freelance journalists. Get a list of them, and then you can filter that list by relationship status if it's relevant, current city, employer. There's all kinds of things you can do. Now, my personal view, and I've got no facts whatsoever to back this up with, I will find journalists on Facebook, but I don't contact them through Facebook. For me, at least, Facebook's a more personal platform. I've usually met somebody before I become friends with them on Facebook. And I don't know. Like I say, I've got no facts. There's every possibility that I'm completely talking out of my arse here. But I personally wouldn't contact them through Facebook first. I'd go and research them, check them out on Twitter, find a public email address. There's loads of these queries. I've not got time to go through them all today, but you can download from that URL, which I'll tweet later, a bit of a cheat sheet that talks about query structure and the kind of things that you can query. Another tool that I've more recently started using is one that does a similar kind of thing on Twitter, tribalytics.com. You can put a brand in there, and you can find out the kind of things that the fans of that brand like on Twitter, the sort of content they're engaging with. Worth a try. There's so many variables in any given content marketing project that it's almost impossible to say that one tactical change has had X impact on whatever part of the process. But very unscientifically, I've analyzed a few timesheets for projects before we started doing these personas with Graph Search, and a few after, and we reckon that we're saving about 40% on our outreach time, which makes sense. When you become really familiar with your audience, your outreach plan pretty much starts writing itself. The next big challenge that we've had to overcome is something that Pete talked about. generating ideas. Nothing's as dangerous as an idea when it's the only one we have. So that's a quote by Émile Chartier, and that makes me cringe, because I think back to that first failed infographic that still haunts my dreams to these days. And I can see it. We didn't pick the best idea of a bunch. We had one idea, and we all convinced ourselves it was absolutely epic, when in reality, it was really boring. So I think that you need pretty much a stream of ideas, which is all good and well if you're the kind of person who has ideas falling out of the backside. I'm not. We had to make this process-driven. I'm not saying that you can make creativity process-driven, but I believe if you've got people, you've probably already got loads of ideas, and you just need to put a process behind getting those ideas out. And we needed to make this more efficient. Where do I personally look for inspiration on efficiency? Germany. Land of fast cars, quick, slick, integrated transport, more rules than anybody ever needs, and the most efficient beer servers in the whole world. It seems like everybody in Munich can do this. I tried. I can't do this. But when you go back to Germany's advertising industry in the 60s and 70s, we come across an ad exec called Bernd Rohrbach. And in the late 60s, he wrote for a sales magazine about a method that he called the 635 method of brainwriting. And he claimed that this could generate 108 ideas in 30 minutes. That sounds like pretty good economy to me, so we had to go. And I love this for stage 1 ideas generation. So I want to tell you how that works. Everyone involved needs a worksheet. There's a link to one there. Again, I'll tweet afterwards, but frankly, you could make your own in about 10 seconds. You need 6 people. They don't have to be in the marketing team or in Friends. They just have to understand what you're trying to achieve. And you need half an hour. 30 minutes, 6 people. For those of you agency side, that's 3 hours of chargeable time. Yeah, we all count. We all count. So you start with a problem statement, as Rohrbach called it. In the context of content marketing, I'd probably call it a brief or a goal. Then round 1 starts, and you've got 6 people sitting around a table with a worksheet, working in silence. And the first time you do this, they're going to be cursing you for making them try it. And they've got 5 minutes to write down 3 ideas that meet this brief. And everyone's got to write something. The first time we tried this, the idea was related, it was like a finance session, and one of our guys just wrote sharks because he ran out of time. That only happened once. At the end of the round, everybody passes their sheet to the person on my left. So now everyone's got a sheet with 3 ideas written by somebody else on. The principle here is that those 3 ideas act as some sort of trigger for you to write 3 more. And we repeat this till we've done 6 rounds, and you're left with 6 worksheets with 18 ideas on each. It's 108 ideas in 30 minutes. You do get a bit of overlap. Typically, we get about 80 to 100 ideas that are unique enough to warrant standing on their own. And this took us from complaining and whining that we didn't have enough ideas, right the way to complaining and whining that we had too many ideas. You'd be forgiven for thinking that we're just hard to please. However, having too many ideas can be a real efficiency drain. It's too easy to spend too much time and energy developing substandard ideas. So the next challenge for us was taking this big list and narrowing it down to some more ideas that we'd further develop. And we've adopted a process called NUF testing. And how this works is you get all your ideas on a spreadsheet, and you mark them all out of 10 against 3 criteria. N, how new is the idea? Let's not get into the ethics of whether there's any such thing as a new idea. It's like, in the context of your current content marketing landscape, how new is the idea? How original is it? How useful is the idea? How likely is it that this is going to be the idea that hits your brief? And how feasible? How likely, with time constraints and budget constraints, is it that you're actually going to be able to achieve this? Then you're left with a score out of 30. We typically cull anything less than 20. Unless it's been a really bad day and someone's written sharks, then we let 18 slide through. I want to talk about a few of the tools that we're using as well. So Simitator.com's Twitter generator lets you generate an image that looks like a tweet from anybody. And I do have a more productive use for this than sending myself fictional dreamy tweets from Mark Wahlberg. But I do that quite a lot. So if we're trying to decide between ideas, we'll ask ourselves as a group, in the ideal world, this idea goes live, the content is absolutely amazing. Who tweets the first tweet about it, and what do they write? And we generate those tweets, and we put 6, 7, or 8 of them on a single image. And we upload that image to 5secondtest.com. Anyone who's not heard of 5secondtest.com, it's a crowdsourced user testing site. It's really good. But one of the tests there is called a click test. And that lets you upload an image and ask users a question where the answer is in the form of them clicking somewhere. So we upload our image with 6, 7, or 8 tweets on and ask, which one of these would you share? Which would you click on? It's pretty good. Now, you can't demographically segment the audience that takes part in these tests. So it's not particularly scientific. It's a sanity checking mechanism. Realtimeboard.com, awesome for collaborative online whiteboarding. MindNode.com, my preferred mind mapping tool for Mac. Coggle.it, free equivalents. We use them all regularly in the ideas generation part of what we do. And I'm going to move quickly on to some of the lessons that we've learned in asset generation when it actually comes to producing the content that you've developed the concept for. Don't produce anything yet. We've started stopping, effectively. At the end of the concept development process, we go back and ask ourselves about 100 questions about it. Have we really sanity checked this? Because everybody's still scarred by that first infographic. And even when the process starts, test everything as early as you can. I think back to that first infographic, and we basically just threw it out there at the end of the first draft. It's like, yeah, whatever, it's just content. I'm a big fan of headline split testing for WordPress, title split testing for WordPress, I think it's called. It's a plugin for WordPress that lets you publish an article with several different headline variants, and it will give you the best click-through results. So you can publish like an article related to this content you're doing, get a good feel for what might work as a headline before you've even finished generating your assets. I'm coming back to 5secondtest.com again, because the main 5-second test involves uploading an image. A user's got 5 seconds to look at it, and then you can ask them a series of questions about it. This is great for gauging opinion, first impressions of your content. So we do this, if it's a visual piece of content, we do it at the point at which it's wireframed. We do it after the first draft. We do it after tiny little tweaks. And another way to get honest feedback about visual content is by uploading the images to Imgur and posting on Reddit. You will get some painfully honest feedback from Redditors. They're not afraid to tell you what they think. Hat tip to Neoman for that tip in Manchester. Don't be led by format. So if I think back to that infographic that you'd now be forgiven for thinking I've got an issue about, I have. We decided we were doing an infographic before we decided what it was about. That's stupid. You don't always need bells and whistles. You don't always need to put bells and whistles on things. And I know the temptation is there because there's so much awesome content out there now, as well as all the crap as well, let's be honest. But there's so many projects that are so creative and interactive and just absolutely mind-blowing that sometimes you look at your blog post and think, wow, there's an inferiority complex. But you don't always have to have bells and whistles. A good example is this piece of content we published in 2011. So we went back through our analytics data going back to 2009, and we analyzed the trend in mobile. We produced 2 pieces of content over 6 months. And it worked pretty well for us. Our objective wasn't link building. We did very little outreach. We wanted to build credibility in mobile. We wanted to be able to justify to our clients why, when only 5% of their traffic was mobile, we were telling them to invest in a mobile site. But it did generate links. Across the 2 URLs and the PDF and the homepage, about 100 plus, probably closer to 150. But more to the point, it's the type of links. Big travel brands in the UK, despite the fact that we're working with their competitors, link into us. Our competitors link into us. Our industry press, on it went. I like to field test a story before I add bells and whistles. If I'm going to make it all singing, all dancing, I want to know that it's going to be worth it. A recent example of this, we work with another travel client called Holiday Gems. And we recently surveyed 2,000 people in the UK. We asked them 19 questions about their holiday habits and whether it's the guy or the girl in the relationship who gives up what they really want and cries for 2 weeks. What we found out is that British men are more concerned with tanning than women. So our survey said. And we thought we had quite an interesting story there. And with 19 questions and 2,000 people, you start to think, yeah, you know, this does warrant some visual format. It does warrant making this easy to understand and explain. But that's expensive. We're thinking interactives. It's going to be pricey. So I wanted to field test the story. So we wrote it as a news release. And it got picked up in the Mail Online. I wouldn't call that a good publication, but it's a national publication, national press. And then it got picked up in print, in the Express, another national, Times, another national, and The Sun, one that we generally don't talk about and I would never share ordinarily. But I'm happy now that there's a story there. So now we'll invest in the bells and whistles. Obviously, if you're going to go out and contact journalists and things like that, I would go back to Lexi's deck from yesterday, first of all. In terms of finding contacts, some of the places that we go, presspass.me, it's pretty cool, muckrack.com, journalisted.com, all really good for finding journalists who are writing in certain areas about certain topics. I would recommend you read this book, The PR Masterclass by Alex Singleton. It's not sort of a PR book for people who are in PR. It's like common sense, actionable things that you can do before you start contacting people to pitch your content or an idea. And finally, think multi-screen, especially if one of your primary promotion vehicles is going to be social media. Social media is really mobile. I love this website. It's nothing to do with us, but this website is set up to allow people of Bristol in England to get a feel for the kind of schemes that they're thinking about employing to make Bristol low carbon by 2050. It's pretty cool. Quite interactive. People can upvote and downvote. They really want you to share it. And I first came across this on social media. Now, 80% of Twitter traffic in the UK is mobile, and it's not too dissimilar in the US. But when I opened this on my smartphone, this is what I got. To explore Bristol's future, please visit this website on a bigger device. So apparently, Bristol's future is not mobile. Really? And not naive, it's not always possible within the time constraints or budget to replicate every feature from an interactive on a smartphone device. But you can put a static version out there, some content that's consumable. Promoting your content on social media that is so predominantly mobile, and then when people get there, basically telling them to piss off and come back on a desktop, it's not good practice. So, we'll sum up. Facebook graph search, absolute gift for content marketers. It's the only reason that I like Mark Zuckerberg. 635 brainwriting, I would really encourage you to give this a go. And more to the point, if you do, get in touch with me and let me know how it went. I'm really interested to find out whether other agencies are finding this as effective as we are. Let goals lead the format, and don't apply the bells and whistles until you've proven you've got a purpose or a story or some point to what you're doing. And content marketing is no longer just about catering to your audience's interest or needs. It's about catering to the screens that they're using as well. And now I'm going to stop waffling. Thank you.
First of all, I'm just going to say, as soon as you started talking, we've never met before. Between you and Lexi Mills, I don't know who has the better accent. So this process that you describe,
yeah.
I work in content, it's much more involved than what most people do in their daily process.
Yep.
And it seems to me like what most people do, if they're really invested in content, they have a calendar, and
Yep.
the calendar rules everything, and once you fill in the calendar, your job is done. And it seems like it's more about frequency and just getting it out there, and you can show that to your boss. We did some work.
Yep.
How important, in your mind, is maybe de-emphasizing frequency and putting quality first?
I do think frequency matters. I mean,
Okay.
yeah, big content projects might take months, but you can't just expect your audience to sort of sit around twiddling their thumbs while you do a big project. If that's the case, they're going to be cheating on you reading somebody else's content. So I quite like a process of big content, little content, like quite a lot of regular features that maybe don't have quite the same process as the big ones, and accompanying that with less frequent, bigger projects.
So let's say you talked about Facebook graph search,
Yep.
which anybody can use as long as it's available, right? It's not just for your users.
Nope, no, anyone can use it.
So when you're doing that process, you're researching, let's say you work for a travel site,
Yep.
and you're researching bars that users who like this. How important is it to stay on target with travel versus stretching into those all other categories? When do you go too far, or can you go too
Yeah,
far?
that depends on your client. So some of our clients are pretty lenient. I think you've always got to try and tie it back into your niche, but like travel, there's so many parts of travel. You can go into the food associated with certain countries. You can go into the culture and the pop culture. So I think you can be quite loose. I think you've got to do quite a lot of lateral thinking and just be prepared to be a bit more flexible.
Rand.
Hey. Yeah, so Stacey, I enjoyed your talk tremendously. I love Dr. Pete's setup, and then I felt like you were just this great epilogue in terms of how to do this work. But I'm curious about the tactical part of content promotion. So one of the things that you mentioned, which I'm a big believer in, is producing content that's not just for your customers,
Yep.
but for an influential audience who might amplify that message and help you reach your customers.
Sure.
I know how to reach these people. They're my customers. They're already in my community. How do you go out and reach these people? I saw the Facebook graph search, like
Yeah.
how to know who they are. How do you get to them?
Interest-based generally. So we'll say like with Travelbag, it's like we know that these are Travelbag's customers, but Travelbag have also got a lot of data about the demographics of their customers. So you can even get, with graph search, you can even get into like women over 30 who live in Basingstoke and like this TV show. So Travelbag can help us, and we use their social metrics to find other demographics.
But once you identify those people
Yep.
via graph search, then what?
Paid Facebook advertising works for content promotion, so that's quite good.
So you guys are doing a lot of paid to get content in front of folks.
Yeah, we do a lot of paid content discovery through Facebook, Twitter, some of the content discovery platforms like Zamanta.
Have you used Outbrain or Taboola?
I've tried Outbrain, never tried Taboola.
Any thoughts on Outbrain?
Outbrain, yeah, I really like Outbrain. I can't decide between Outbrain and Zamanta, and I guess the problem is like with anything, like you can't necessarily read too much into your results because there's so much difference between the pieces of content you do. So we try and stick with, if we're trying multiple platforms, we try and do one for all travel, one for all finance, to try and work out what might work best. I found Outbrain does work better in travel and retail. I think it's a bit more consumery. So.
And how much are you spending, if you don't mind me asking, like
No,
on
not at all.
average?
Not at all. So for a big client, like our travel clients are pretty big clients, we might spend like £1,500 promoting a big one on a single platform, so $2,500 to $3,000, there or thereabouts.
So you'll spend $3,000 promoting a piece of content, and then with the hope that that kind of eventually leads to brand recognition, traction, signups.
Yep.
How do you calculate ROI on that? How do you convince a client to do ROI on that?
Set goals first. So we set targets with a client and say, for this project, we want X number of social shares, X amount of links, whatever, tie it back into the overall thing. And we usually tell our clients targets that are actually lower than our internal targets, but don't tell them. So we set targets like that, and then we've hit tangible, deliverable objectives, and it's our job just to make sure that hitting those does tie into the overall objective. So our clients are pretty good like that as long as they've got, here is what we will deliver.
That's very impressive. Thank you.
Thank you.
Under promise, over deliver.
Yeah, exactly.
Last question.
I have a question about the 635 format.
Yep.
What if you have a team that is around the world? Because I do content creation for the knowledge management space, and they're all around the world. Is there a way to do that when where they wouldn't all be in the same room?
You probably could. You could maybe use some live video streaming with like an online whiteboarding tool for sharing the ideas. Maybe Google Hangouts or something where you can do like sticky notes while you're on the Hangout. I think it does need some sort of video collaboration, but I've never tried it remotely. So if you do, let me know how it goes.
Stacey, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. Cheers.